Hey, welcome back to Dukes on Twitch, back with more YouTube exclusive content. Of course, this is for my subscribers, so if you do like this content, consider subscribing. You'll get notifications when this goes live, and I will be doing a league a week, so definitely check that out. Usually different decks, usually all fair decks, and that isn't different tonight. We have BANT Maverick, which is a deck that mainly splashes for Oko, unfortunately. I feel like Maverick was the chosen one that should never go towards Oko, but it's just such a powerful card that it's definitely worth splashing for in a deck like Maverick, because it allows you to do a few things. With the help of mana accelerants like Birds of Paradise and Noble Hierarch, and even Dryad Arbor, you have a pretty high run rate of actually getting Oko out turn 2, which is pretty great. Not many decks right now can do that. There's a few decks running around with Noble Hierarchs in them and also playing Oko, but I'd say BANT Maverick is currently the main one. So being able to play a turn 2 Oko even on the draw is pretty nice, especially when most of your opponents can be playing them at least turn 3 at the earliest. This list is also running a Stoneforge Mystic package, which is just another way to make sure that my late game Birds of Paradise and Noble Hierarchs also become threats. Because I think especially with Legacy right now, you got to make sure that each of your pieces have a function and they do something in the late game, because you know, a bird is fine for mana acceleration on turns 1, 2, 3, but past that it's a pretty bad top deck. So at least Oko can turn it into a 3/3 that your opponent has to deal with, and Stoneforge allows you to find, of course, your equipment package in Jitte, Sword of Fire and Ice, and Batterskull, usually the core 3 in any Stoneforge build, which also turn these into threats, which is really nice. That's the big reason to splash blue. We are playing Uro in the deck as a Green Sun's target. Obviously just a really powerful creature, really nice against the Delver decks, really nice against any deck where you want to grind. The card draw is something that Maverick isn't too used to, which is really nice. The 6/6 body is fantastic. And also just putting a land into play. This deck does play 23 lands, so usually you do have something to put in. And obviously we have a Karakas deck as well, so if you just want to buy some time, you do have the option of returning it with Karakas, with the trigger of Uro on the stack, which is kind of cool. But that's the only blue splash in the main deck. The core is essentially a green-white deck, which is kind of nice. Some considerations that I chose to make were playing Gaddock Teeg as my main deck Green Sun's Hate Bear over Collector Ouphe in the sideboard. Really just switching those out because of Ouphe having an impact on my Stoneforge Mystic package. And Gaddock Teeg right now stopping, I believe, Tibalt from being cast. Now that I say that, I believe it does work that way, even though they say cascade into Tibalt and then choose to flip it. I assume they can't cast the Planeswalker, so they have to cast the 2/2 or the 2/1. So yeah, Teeg mainly for that. It's also just a really nice play against combo right now. So, you know, a turn 1 mana dork into a turn 2 Green Sun's fatigue is really nice. And then we also have Pridemage, which usually you see the deck playing Knight of Autumn, because it's a little bit more Swiss Army knife. It has a little bit more play in different decks, like maybe against Burn, maybe the 4 life is worth it, or against an Oko deck, it's nice to have a creature with counters on it. But just for a CMC point of view, I wanted to keep the stay away from another 3-drop in the deck. I really wanted to just have another 2-drop that I could fetch up, and obviously the Exalted really helps as well. So if I have something like a Birds of Paradise and play with the Jitte and I want to attack with it, I do need Exalted. So I do like that Pridemage kind of adds to the I guess the strength of the Stoneforge package in this deck. And then the consistency is just Green Suns, Sylvan Library, and Thalia. Thalia is really needed as a way just to make sure that some of the combo decks or blue decks don't just run over you, and you do have a bit of a play against them in game 1 at least. Also just really nice. I think Thalia is probably the best Hate Bear printed for these types of decks in Magic's history. I mean, it does everything you want. It protects itself with legendary status and Karakas. It disrupts your opponent with the effect of non-creature spells costing 1 more to cast, and it also pressures, which is huge. So a Thalia, you know, in game 1, again, some decks can be the difference between losing on the spot and just winning thanks to Thalia, which is pretty good. You can never rely on her for the whole game. She is just a speed bump, and opponents are going to make land drops and get through. But I think, you know, if you have a Thalia and then you can back it up with a Gaddock Teeg or a Scavenging Ooze, or maybe even Oko, depending on the combo deck that you're playing against, you're going to have a pretty good run rate. The other big reason to play blue in Maverick is Meddling Mage. Meddling Mage is a pretty interesting hate bear. I really like it because it does actually have an effect on some of Maverick's matchups. And some of the matchups we have a poor game against, things like Doomsday, Elves can be pretty terrible, Show and Tell is another one. Meddling Mage has a pretty good impact against those decks, and can really take them off a lot of their win conditions. I was going to play a third in the deck, but I do like Gaddock Teeg as the Meddling Mage number 3. It allows me to have a Meddling Mage effect that I can Green Suns for against decks like Ant. So instead of just having to name either Tendrils or Empty or Ad Nauseam, Gaddock Teeg kind of adds the ability to just kind of name all 3 of those, which is kind of cool. So I'm a huge fan of Teeg, and I think that kind of makes me not want to play the third Meddling Mage because I have that effect already in Teeg. Ouphe in the board is fantastic. It's obviously very good against the Urza combo decks. It's great against some of the mirrors in like Death and Taxes. It's obviously great against the LED or Lotus Petal decks as well. So Ouphe really nice, especially as a one-off in a deck with Green Sun Zenith. You know, as soon as you bring it into the main deck, you have 5 copies of it, which is, yeah, phenomenal. Deafening Silence is a card that I haven't really gone without since its printing. I think Deafening Silence was, you know, one of the best printings in 2020 for Fair Magic and Legacy, because a lot of the decks like Death and Taxes and Maverick have a lot of 2-mana plays against combo decks. Things like Thalia, Gaddock Teeg, Scavenging Ooze, Aethersworn Canonist. But it was always that, you know, especially on the draw, having to live to the stage where you could actually play a Thalia out or a Canonist out. So Deafening Silence has worked really well. I have seen Chalice in some lists, kind of to the same effect that you can play it for 0 on turn 1 against a few decks, or maybe if you're playing like an Ancient Tomb build of a deck, you can play it on 1, but yeah, Deafening Silence is really good. Leyline is still just my favorite piece of graveyard hate. Leyline gets me so many turn 0 wins, it's not funny, that I just can't take it out. You could play a mix of like maybe Tormod's Crypt and Surgical, or maybe you want to play something like Relic or the new Soul Guide Lantern, I believe it's called, that exiles a card when ETBs. But Leyline just does exactly what you want it to do. It removes your opponent's graveyard from the game, it removes your opponent's graveyard as a resource, and your opponent has to find an answer to Leyline before they can really start applying any sort of push towards their graveyard to start using that. So I like Leyline because it does add to the speed bump effect of a lot of our hate bears, in that by the time they deal with the Leyline, hopefully we have a game state that they just can't deal with. So Leyline, really cool. Thankfully with the birds as well, we can cast it in this deck, but it's pretty tough to hard cast it. Mirran Crusader is a bit of a meta call. There's obviously a lot of Shardless Bug running around with the new Tibalt, so I think Mirran's kind of cool, especially in a deck that I can power it out on turn 2, and I can also equip it to some of my equipment. I'm pretty happy to play Mirran. It's been pretty strong in builds that I've had previously, so I like that. Oblivion Ring, again, I was going to play Skyclave Apparition, but just because of Tibalt, I think I will see it a few times in this league, so I did want to play something that also hit that. Oblivion Ring also great against Show and Tell, because it hits things like Omniscience or Grizzlebrand or Emrakul, whereas Skyclave doesn't. And generally just a nice piece of removal. Obviously, it can itself get hit by Skyclave and also Mirran Fligwisp against something like D&T, but you got to take the losses with the benefits. So Part 2 Exile running it out as just a great removal spell, especially against Rug that traditionally doesn't play basics. It's really for the decks that play Dreadhorde Arcanist, because Maverick is a deck that really needs to answer Dreadhorde ASAP, and by ASAP I mean the turn it comes down, because the games where Dreadhorde even gets to attack once and gets the Flashbacker spell, the percentage chance of you winning that match has lowered significantly. So making sure I just have some sort of interaction for Dreadhorde Arcanist as soon as possible is, yeah, exactly what I want. I guess quickly just the last thing to work on is the 3 Knights. Maverick is traditionally a deck where you just see the 4 of Knights, the 4 Green Suns, the 4 Swords. But I think that Knight's in a kind of weird spot. Knight, of course, is a pretty powerful card. It's a very fair card. It's great when Wasteland is great. It's great when your opponents don't have great removal for it. So maybe they're relying on Bolt instead of Swords to Plowshares. But with cards like Dreadhorde Arcanist and Oko in the format, it's pretty hard to keep Knight alive against the decks where it's going to win you the game. I think against like Eldrazi and Loam, Knight's in a fine position already, and I think Maverick altogether is in a fine position already. So I don't think that any of the matchups where Knight is really good are going to be considerably worse because I'm only playing 3 Knights. I just think that with a lot of the snow decks running around, I'd rather just have another 3-drop like Ramunap or Uro in the deck. So I wanted to make a cut, and Knight was the first card that sort of came to mind. I did also think of cutting the Wastelands down to 3 because we have Ramunap, and Wasteland not being that great in this current meta, but I'm not too sure what I would fill it in with. I would probably just add another land, and it'll probably just be another fetch land. I could potentially see a second Sylvan Library, but the reason I'm not running 2 Sylvan Libraries is because a lot of the Hull Breacher decks are around, and I don't really want to open myself up to them as well by getting hit by Hull Breacher more than I should be. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll reply. But yeah, let's roll through a league. I'll see you in game 1. Hey, welcome back. Game 1. Up against Minnows Grunty. And this hand is pretty cool. We have a turn 1 Noble Hierarch into a turn 2 Oko or Thalia. And then we actually have the Cradle to get the Batterskull out early, which is nice. And something that I didn't point out was that Cradle is kind of acting like the third Stoneforge Mystic, in that it's another way to get this Batterskull out quite quickly. So I'm going to keep this for sure. Probably pretty happy just to fetch up a basic. Could get a Trop. Not too sure what my opponent's on. At least getting a basic doesn't really stifle our position too much, which is nice. No, I'm going to go for a Trop. I think that if my opponent was going to Wasteland me, I'd be more than happy with that, because then I get to play a Thalia next turn. So this could also put us on like Infect for my opponent, which is pretty interesting. So it's always, yeah, good to think about what your plays are gonna provide information to your opponent and what they're about. Turn 1 Delver, okay. Stoneforge, interesting. Pretty happy just with Thalia here. They're gonna force this. That's okay. And then happy to attack. So Uro is pretty nice in this matchup. One thing I do want to find is an answer to Dreadhorde Arcanist if it is coming down next turn. Wasteland. Interesting. So here I have some pretty cool plays. I can play Uro, put in Cradle and float 2 off it while Uro is still in play. So I can play Wasteland, tap out for Uro, and then when Uro triggers, we can put in the Cradle, add 2, and then we can also play Stoneforge Mystic around Daze, which is pretty nice. So I'm pretty happy for that. The other way to do it, I can't, because I won't have white for Stoneforge Mystic if I hold up the other part. So let's go land first. Ah, I did it wrong, didn't I? Yeah, I did. I should go trigger, and then, yeah. I think I'm still happy here just to go for Stoneforge My opponent's already used a force, so hopefully this is okay. If it gets dazed, it's a bit of a feel bad because I did mean to play around it. But that is 100% up to me. Chain's pretty good. The issue with Chain is that it turns off the Cradle as well. Which means next turn we can't even get back Uro with this Windswept Heath because we need the Wasteland to produce a coloured mana. And this is where Maverick can really suffer. Even the one hit here from Dreadhorde is just so good for my opponent that it's going to be pretty tough coming back from this. Unless I can maybe get this Uro into play. I think what my best draw is. It's probably something like just Green Suns for Scavenging Ooze. So I can buy some time, hopefully, against this Dreadhorde Arcanist. But it's going to be difficult. The Wasteland isn't doing too much here for me. If I go for Dryad Arbor end step, it also turns on the Cradle, which is nice. Which means next turn I have access to 6 mana with this Windswept Heath. I'm trying to think if Wasteland has an effect on me if they Wasteland me back. But I don't think they really do because the Wasteland isn't getting this Uro into play. It's really only getting the Batterskull into play. I think I'm pretty happy taking my opponent off red here. See what they do with the Ponder. They chose to shuffle. So I kind of want to keep my opponent off a Bolt to deal with the Dryad Arbor and end step. My opponent will Chain Lightning me. That's fine. Wasteland. Will they Wasteland me now? Okay, that's not too bad because it gives me information that I have to go get another green source. So I don't mind this. I guess just hope they don't have Stifle, but I haven't seen Stifle in a long time. So we're getting Dryad Arbor with this one. Now we're fetching Trop. Green, green. Blue, blue. Uro, we'll get rid of... I guess I kind of want the creatures in case of Scavenging Ooze. But can't really play around days here, unfortunately. Yeah. Hitting the Tundra is also hard because now I don't have white mana, so even a Swords to Plowshares at the top doesn't do anything. Chain's also pretty relevant because it turns off the Dryad Arbor Cradle, which pretty much takes me off 2 mana. but we can hope. Interesting. What if... I think our only play here is to actually just go... hit our own land and then try to get Uro back. One, two, three, four, five. Alright, they just have force. So what do we want to do here? We definitely want the Part 2 Exiles. I don't mind the Mirrans. I think we'll definitely take out Gaddock Teeg. Questing Beast is interesting. I don't mind it as a hasty creature. But it might be taking the cut. I do like the Batterskull still because of it just makes Stoneforge a real threat, which is nice. So it makes it have to kind of be hit early on. It could just be Cradle. I don't think Cradle is great in this matchup because my opponent usually deals with my creatures as just 1-for-1. So I think it's just going to be a pretty easy switch here. Everything else seems okay. Unfortunately, that yeah, the misinterpretation of how the stack should resolve is just my error. Which would have been, yeah, pretty cool to see it play out the other way. They did have the removal spell for the Stoneforge, but would have been cool. Rogue definitely a tougher matchup with Dreadhorde. I do hope that changes are made because it's not the funnest deck to play against now, but before that, it was a fantastic matchup. Just like a really interactive, back and forth, really fun matchup. And obviously Dreadhorde and Oko were just a little bit too powerful for Maverick to keep up with. So for a more sort of healthy matchup, I would love to see more of it. This is an interesting hand because it doesn't have a green source, but we do have a turn 3 Mirran at worst. And some interaction with Wasteland and Sword, so I'm actually going to keep this. And just lead on the plains. I don't really want to get Wasteland off the Tundra early on. One change due to Dreadhorde is definitely that I think most Maverick players now give a lot more patience towards Delver and wait a few turns to use maybe your one removal spell in hand to then hopefully deal with the Dreadhorde once it comes down, instead of sort of wasting it on the Delver. And then, you know, not being able to answer a Dreadhorde Arcanist the next turn. They went with Delver, okay. Thalia. Well, Thalia is pretty interesting. I don't mind getting rid of the second Tundra here. I could kind of play around Daze by Wastelanding and then play next turn, but I think just landing a Thalia here is fine. And even if it gets countered, at least it also means that next turn if I draw into a mana source for my Oko or Sylvan Library, it's gonna come down a little bit earlier due to not being taxed by my own Thalia. Ponder. I'd probably love to see a Ponder here. I definitely don't want to see an Arcanist. Okay. Well, Bolt's not the worst. One less Bolt for the Mirran, which is nice. Dreadhorde's okay, thankfully we have the swords. Hierarch. Alright, well I'm definitely trying to swords this first. Okay. Now we can race my opponent. The only issue now is that if my opponent has like a fetch or a green source and Hooting Mandrills, then the Wastelands definitely don't feel as good as they could be. But it looks like we're just going to go for a classic beatdown here. And if I draw a green source, then this Noble Hierarch's going to be really nice at, yeah, making sure I can keep attacking and applying pressure. I'm going to go for Forest. I'm going to play out the Hierarch and try to just beat down for 6 here. Because it means next turn I can potentially have near lethal with Oko on the Noble. Which would only be an extra damage because Exalted is picked up twice by Mirran Crusader. Alright. Another Mirran. Now, I don't think I actually have a way to lose here if I just make the Noble a 3-3 and swing at them for 7. Because at least then, if they draw into a... I guess Bolt doesn't do anything because I'm at 7. If they have Bolt and I attack with both creatures next turn as a 3-3, then it doesn't matter. So I might as well just apply as much pressure as possible this turn, which is through the Mirran. I'm just going to create a food here. I don't think there's any other real line. The food also just gives me life, which is quite nice. I mean, now my opponent can't even hold back the Insect Aberration to chump block the Mirran because we have the food at the ready, which is nice. This feels like a Submerge, perhaps, but they can't because they don't have an island, so... Yeah, interesting. Pretty happy just to send back what we had. I don't think I need the Oblivion Rings, but they are interesting. I could do something like go down on 2 Thalias on the draw, especially because a lot of it's taxing me as well with my extra removal. So I don't mind Oblivion Ring just because it's another answer to Oko and another answer to Dreadhorde Arcanist. Interestingly enough, Rug does have a diverse range of threats, and Maverick usually has some pretty tough spots. So if you take green, white, black Maverick as a consideration, Abrupt Decay hits everything but Hooting Mandrills. Part to Exile and Swords to Plowshares hits everything except for Oko. But Oblivion Ring is one of the creatures that actually hits everything. One of the answers, sorry, that hits everything. So I don't mind Ring, especially because it's probably hard for my opponent to deal with. Outside of counter magic, you know, it can't be Oko'd, which is kind of cool. So I'm gonna try it out. This is a turn 2 Oko, but not much else. I think I am pretty happy to send this away. The Dryad Arbor is also not what I want, so I'm gonna mulligan once. Okay, this is a 2-lander with a Green Suns for Dryad Arbor, and then perhaps an answer in Oblivion Ring. I'm going to keep it because I don't think going to 5 is going to get me there. But we can hope that this does okay. I'm going to drop the Batterskull because the sword at least is something that I could cast pretty early on. Probably just going for Savannah off the Misty into Green Suns for Dryad Arbor. But this is a pretty fair hand, unfortunately. I don't have the luxury of, you know, pondering or brainstorming for removal, so I've just got to kind of play off the top of the deck and hope I do okay. Opponent having a good think about there, 7. Oh, they went to 4. Okay, well that's a great way to try to beat Delver, but it's definitely not game over. They're going to ponder. Let's see how they ponder. Because if they shuffle, I'm pretty happy to Wasteland straight up. They chose to shuffle. This turns off any other Ponders or Brainstorms into another land, so maybe we can get them. Maybe they kept a 1-land Ponder and didn't get another land. Alright. Chose to shuffle. Okay. Alright, well now I'm pretty happy to go... I think Savannah. I don't think I can play it safe and go for Forest. But we have a lot of 3-drops, so I kind of need this to resolve, because otherwise it's looking pretty rough. Maybe there's a thought that the Wasteland was actually better for me, but I think if my opponent ponders on it after a Mulder 4 and shuffles, I'm definitely hitting that land. They're going to daze it. Okay. Delver's good. Flips in a daze. That's huge because we only have 3-drops. Alright. I think I'm just going to throw away something here. And it's probably the sort of Fire and Ice. I'll get a Trop. I mean, if this gets dazed, I'm more than happy. Yeah, that's more than fine. The biggest thing is that keeps my opponent off a Dreadhorde Arcanist, which is the one card that I'm just really kind of scared about right now. Path, okay. They didn't play a land. Interesting. I'm actually just going to O-ring this Insect Elaboration. And then hopefully next time we can play the Knight. Just to make sure we don't lose this to some sort of Wasteland off the top for my opponent. Alright. Looking pretty strong, thankfully. Considering the Trop, I think that maybe Tundra was the better decision because it does have the double white that I need for Mirran. Speaking of. Alright. Attack first. I am going to go for Knight here. I just like it a little bit more over the Mirran just because of its ability to pressure my opponent on different axes. All right. Noble's pretty nice. I could path in my opponent's upkeep to play around Force Negation. So I can do that off this Tundra. So what if we go... Being able to flash back the Green Suns is pretty cool. think I'll attack first, put them down to 8. And then see what they do to the path, because then I can wasteland my opponent as well, which is kind of nice. No blocks. I'll wasteland now, because at least that plays into 1 more damage getting through. And now I actually don't mind just making this a 3/3. Let's be honest. Perhaps taking them off the second land was better than attacking with the knight, but I do like just getting pressure in because, you know, there is a world where Submerge makes this game a lot more difficult for me. But double Mirran here looking pretty strong. It's going to be tough because my opponent needs multiple answers, obviously, but the Noble could be a 3/3 next turn, so if they don't have another creature, they're obviously taking 6 at least. They actually can't block, because what we can do is just switch it with the Noble after we tap the Noble for mana, and then they have a tapped Noble, so pretty lucky. This definitely makes me think that they have... Submerge for the Knight. So I'm going to first cast a Mirran, because it plays around days, and then make the Noble a 3/3. More than fine, because now this turns off fetches as well, which is pretty huge. It also turns off Force of Will if they still have Force in the deck. I mean, maybe my opponent had double Bolt. I mean, double Bolt and Dreadhorde is just dead. I didn't even realize I was at 9, which is something I should definitely take into consideration. So luckily a Brainstorm doesn't do it for my opponent. Yeah, so a little bit fortunate there with my opponent going to 4, but you could see that Delver can definitely put up a fight with only 4 cards. We did have a bit of a slow start with so many 3-drops in hand, but obviously the lands kept coming, which is nice, and we were able to get a win over Delver, which is cool. So a pretty nice way to start off the league. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Hey, welcome back to Dukes on Twitch. This time I am not doing music, so if you do like my recorded sessions without music, let me know. I like listening to music when I play, but I'm not sure if it's the type of music that you guys like, so yeah, let me know in the comments. We're on the play, which is nice. We have a okay hand. I'm going to keep this. It is a turn 2 Thalia or a turn 2 Stoneforge. I'm going to go with Misty Pass, just to play around Wasteland, but also allow me to hold up Swords to Plowshares on turn 1. Misty also gives away the least amount of information. For all my opponent knows, we could be a combo deck. Windswept Heath. Interesting. Green Suns. Okay. Against the Windswept Heath deck, I don't mind going for early mana accelerant. So just Savannah, Forest, and Green Suns. This means next turn I can 2-spell, which is kind of nice. Opponent forcing this. Ah, they're playing Infect. Okay. Well, I'm pretty happy that got forced and not my Thalia or Swords here. Or even Stoneforge for Jitte. Blooded Agent's pretty good. I think here I need Wasteland. That's also interesting. So here I have to make the decision. Do I Swords the Blighted Agent and see if they can go off with Inkmoth Nexus? Or do I play the Thalia and Noble out and then hopefully get to a stage where either Oko or Stoneforge can answer this? Because next turn, if I can Oko the Blighted Agent and then hold the sword up for Inkmoth, it's so much better. But it's just, can I live that extra turn? That's the big one. Because unfortunately here I can't play Thalia and hold up swords because it will cost 2. I don't mind swords Blighted Agent and then play Thalia. Because if they have a daze, it returns the land anyway. And I do have some pretty nice outs to Inkmoth in Wasteland. I could also just go for Oko right now on Blighted Agent. That's interesting as well. I don't mind that play. It also means that it's not going to cost more through Thalia, which is nice. They might even use a pump spell to get Oko off the field. That would be pretty interesting. Okay. Create a food. Play Thalia. Play Noble. Pass. And then next turn we can play Stoneforge and also hold up Swords to Plowshares, which is pretty good. My opponent here can probably just pay at least 8 life, get under 10. But it obviously depends on what's on top. Nothing. Wow. Second Inkmoth is pretty good. But they're just going to attack with the Blighted Agent. Interesting. No blocks. Okay. Another Blighted Agent. Okay. And a Glistener Elf. Okay. Questing Beast. Doesn't do what I want here. I think what I want is Stoneforge Mystic for Jitte. And then hold up Swords to Plowshares. My opponent's got 1 card in hand. I think because I have the swords up, I'm happy just making the food a 3/3. And this means they have to throw either the Blighted Agent or the Inkmoth at it, because we can potentially block the Glistener Elf. I don't mind this, because also if they go aggressive on the Sylvan Library, I want to make sure I have a good way to connect on the way back. So up the food. Play Stoneforge. Oh, just a 6. Let's go and get Jitte. And then pass. I'm not going to attack. I do want to block the Thalia on the Glistener Elf, so... see how aggressive my opponent is here. Nothing. Wow. If they activate a Nexus and send Nexus and Agent at Oko, then I don't mind destroying 1 to keep the Oko around. They're all attacking Oko, which is interesting. So I could trade here. And then swords the Inkmoth. But I think I kind of want to keep the swords around. It's tough, because next turn I'm definitely attacking with the Jitte. So I won't have any mana available anyway. So I kind of want to just go 3/3 on 3/3. See if they do any pumping. They don't. So now let's get rid of 1 Inkmoth. And the nice thing here is that if they do try to do something, that's more than fine. Because next turn I'm definitely getting in with this Jitte, so that's pretty good. It means they can't hold up Vines of Vastwood to target my own creature in response to equipping the Jitte. I guess they can. Interesting. Well, if they have vines, they have vines. Looks like they do. Well, hopefully we get one turn. My opponent didn't draw anything, which is interesting. Interesting. They're just going to try to go wide here, I guess. Yep. All right. Equip Stoneforge. Attack. And now I get to just re-equip to Thalia. I also don't want to use these yet. I think I'm happy just seeing how they attack next turn. But let's just have a quick think. We have 19 minutes, so the Glistener Elf I'm not afraid of because of the Thalia. It can be a little bit rough with Pendelhaven off the top, but otherwise I think Glistener Elf is okay. Blooded Agent I could get rid of right now, but then if they do multiple spells of Sylvan Library, they can respond to the last Jitte counter left on the Jitte in their turn by pumping again. So luckily the Jitte is too strong here, but definitely an interesting thought. If you're watching this, let me know in comments what you would do. If you would use a Jitte counter now, or if you would just wait. Because I think there's a lot of power of having two counters, because it means they need to have two pump spells at least to save something. Or they're just attacking for one, and then we're using these probably in their end of turn or in our turn. So this is going to be an interesting one. I don't mind these just as extra removal. Oblivion Ring for Blooded Agent is pretty good. I don't mind taking out the Batterskull. Gaddock Teeg is only really turning off Force. I think it's doing a lot more at turning off our own Green Suns. Uro can definitely come out. And then probably just the Questing Beast. I think that's how I want to sideboard. Everything else seems pretty good. Thalia is still really strong even on the draw. Deafening Silence. Deafening Silence is definitely a card that I want. Probably more so on the play, so I don't mind that I don't have it on the draw. It means that if they try to pump something and we have removal, then our removal just is uncounterable because they can't cast another spell. So potentially something we bring in for the third game, if there is a third game. Should have thought a little bit more about that. Huh. This is a nice hand, especially in the blind. We have Mana Acceleration and Green Suns. We have Knight for Wasteland. We have Thalia. But I think I do want to keep a hand with at least one removal spell. So I'm going to mulligan this. Ugh. Alright. I'll keep this. And I'll bottom the Forest. Because I like to Green Suns for Dryad Arbor turn 1, and then have a backup Green Suns for maybe something else. And then I'll like the second Uro in case the first one gets countered. Alright, let's go for Trop. Trop into Dryad Arbor. The second green suns could just be our white source for Noble Hierarch. Interesting. Happy to cast Oko. Alright, that's a pretty huge win there. Wow, I did not expect that to happen. They're going to scale up, okay. That's fair. Take out the Oko. They missed a land, which is interesting. I don't mind play Wasteland, play Night, play around Days. Force pitch Days. Okay. I am going to keep the Wasteland around for Inkmoth Nexus, I believe. We have Oko to play around Blighted Agent, which is nice. And this also means that next turn I can Green Suns for another night and play around Days, which is kind of cool. But they can definitely play the fair game here. I mean, they're attacking for 4 a turn, which isn't nothing. Gonna go for Savannah. And just Green Suns for another night. Another land isn't great for my opponent. See how they attack. I'm just going to let this one slide. Ooh. Could they have like Invigorate no. Or maybe become Immense Berserk? That'd be rough. Alright, we gain 4. But now Berserk. Xaxes. Nice. Alright, definitely bringing in Deafening Silence. I'm not too sure about Mirrans here. I think I'm okay with everything else. I think I can drop out the Skoos and maybe just one Thalia, but Thalia on the play is really nice. Might just be a Green Suns in all honesty. The one nice thing about Green Suns though is that it just really increases my ability to ramp on turn 1. Could be Karakas. Could potentially see Karakas coming out. I don't mind going down on a land. Double Wasteland hand. I'm going to mulligan this. I do want some more power to this hand. And sadly, this isn't it. We don't have any... we have a turn 2 Stoneforge. That's about it. Okay, I'll keep this. I'll bottom Tundra and probably keep the second Thalia and just bottom a Windswept Heath here. Noble's fine. I'm not going to show the Wasteland just yet. Just going to get a Savannah. And play a Thalia. No attack. Interesting. Stoneforge. Jitte. The question here is, do I want to Wasteland the Inkmoth and play around crop rotation and also play around any sort of protection effect? The big thing is that next turn if I draw a land, I could attack with the Jitte, which is kind of nice. I think because of Thalia, I'm going to see what my opponent does first. Swords here. Interesting. I think I am happy to Wasteland here because next time if I'm just hard casting the Jitte, then I'm not holding up the swords. So I'd rather just take out the Inkmoth here to know that it's gone and then still have Swords to Plowshares up the following turn. Fairy. Interesting. Did not expect a fairy. Probably should have. It's a pretty sweet deck. Pretty sweet card in this deck, especially because of turning off Swords to Plowshares. Pond is okay. Interesting. All right. I don't mind attacking to Fairy here, just to stop the bounce on Thalia. Just hoping they don't have something. Wow, okay, that's kind of cool. But again, they can just get us with normal damage, which is pretty scary. I don't mind Ramunap and then get back Windswept Heath, because that allows me to get back Dryad Arbor if I want to block. I think here I'm happy to attack into Teferi. I guess we can't Swords, which is a little bit rough because of the Teferi. We can't Swords in response to them actually pumping one of their own creatures, but at least that means I don't have the pump spell for their turn. Sever Swords. Okay, and they have 1 card left. Hopefully just fetching to get another look at Sylvan Library. Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. So they have 1 card left. No great blocks. Okay. That's not too bad. Because now I get to fetch and use the sword now. On the Blighted Agent. But I think now they get to bounce the Jitte and cause me to use the counters first, which is a little bit rough. Maybe I should have used that first. They're going to brainstorm. They have 2 cards. So I could use a counter now to see if they have some sort of pump spell, but then it puts me in the position of only having the 1 Jitte counter, which is pretty rough. What I should have also done is back when I had the fetch land and I couldn't sword in their turn, I should have just got Dryad Arbor to have a second creature that I can attack with Jitte. Because if they don't have a great out here, then the Teferi can just bounce the Ramunap to kind of Time Walker turn. Definitely some small errors that I just could have maybe thought about a little bit more. They have 3 cards in hand. Yes, they bounce here. We go to remove. They let this one resolve. And then we go to remove this one and they pump in response. Yep. And this must mean they just have it, because then they would have returned the creature instead, not the Jitte. Oh, they had the swords. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. GG's. Alright. Unfortunate, but that's definitely the Infect matchup for you. It can be pretty tough, especially for Maverick without some of the permission that other decks can have. But yeah, a close one, but just not ours. I'll see you in round 3. Cheers. Hey, welcome back, Dukes on Twitch. Back with round 3. This is a turn 2 Oko, so I'm going to keep this. We also have the Green Suns in case the Noble doesn't survive, which is kind of nice. Drop into Noble. Not too sure what BJ is on. So this will be interesting. Pluto Delta, okay. Looks like Rug. Alright. Sadly can't do anything here, but that's okay. Hopefully no second removal spell for the Dryad Arbor, because that would be rough. Drop is fine. Okay. A land would be really nice. Wasteland, okay. It allows me to play around days, which is kind of cool. Just ticking up here. And probably just to keep my opponent off removal and Dreadhorde, I'm okay with Wastelanding here. Means I have to have, like, red source Bolt and Flip Delver to deal with the Oko. Oko also makes the cradle bigger, which is kind of nice, with the food tokens becoming creatures, which is pretty sweet. Ponder. We do want to see a shuffle here. Let's be fair. Chose not to shuffle. Okay. Chain lightning that. Okay. Night. So I could exchange the food and the Delver, but if they have their own Oko, then it's pretty tough. They get their own 3/3. So here I think we just go turn this into a food. And then just Green Suns for Noble Hierarch because it's a white source. Which also means I can attack for 4 this turn, which is relevant. And then if they spend a Bolt and a Delver swing at the Oko, we have a backup, which is pretty cool. My opponent can't just keep attacking my mana dog, because I have to really make sure they can deal with what I have on board as well in the Oko. Ponder first. Chose to shuffle. Nice. Ponder again. No Arcanist still. That's huge. Chose to shuffle. They found a land. Okay. Please attack the Oko. Nice. Okay, this is fine. Looks like they're going to try to finish it off. Oh, another Delver. Okay, that's fine. Oh, Swords is cool. Two, 3, 4 mana. I like create a food. I like attacking with the food. And I don't mind playing the Knight because it's a 4/4. Means it plays around Bolt and it can't be Arcanist this turn, which is pretty huge. No flip. Preordain is a 2 cards to the bottom. Alright. Rug, we started pretty much the same last time. I'm not too sure if we played with the Mirrans. I believe we did. We definitely took out the Teeg and the Qasali Pridemage. We took out the Questing Beast. We took out the Cradle. I think we might have not brought in the Mirrans. No, we did. That's right, we took out 2 Thalias. I don't mind this. This is a pretty sweet shell. Cradle rough. I can definitely see builds right now of Maverick without Cradle, just because it's not great against Snow. Dead of Winter's a card. And also there's run a lot of removal that's 1-for-1, like Swords to Plowshares, Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy, Ice Fang to some extent. So there's a lot of decks right now that punish you for going wide, so Cradle can put you in situations where you don't actually want to be there. This hand is okay. I'll definitely keep this. Turn 1 Ponder. Chose to not shuffle. Cool. Trop, okay. I don't mind just going for a basic here. Does mean, I guess with Trop they can't really Wasteland and remove the Noble, but Forest is fine, because it means I can still go turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic if the Noble dies. Chain, okay. Another Noble, interesting. I don't mind that because it just plays around days, but I should have thought about this a little bit more and probably played out the Trop to not hold up the Savannah. That is my other white source, so I think I'd rather just keep the Savannah in hand so I can swords on my turn around days. This could be Clots. Could also be Oko. This could be Clots. Okay. Annoying but fair. Ooh, Library's pretty nice. I think here I like just Stoneforge and Library. Opponent having a good think about this one. Which makes me think they don't have a removal spell for it. So I think I might just get Batterskull. Because it really makes the Stoneforge a threat. And if they're going to bolt the Stoneforge, it's 1 less bolt for the Mirran and 1 less for the Oko. So I think I'm okay with that. But Clots is kind of scary. We do have the O-Rings, which is nice. Which can answer it, which is pretty cool. And Rug doesn't really have great ways to deal with enchantments. So we're going to be okay here, I think. Opponent going for mana. Clot's also interesting because it can make me lose some power with another Reliquary because it can exile lands from my graveyard. Red in pool. Chain. Go after my mana. Interesting. Maybe they have Wasteland for Savannah here? This is why I really like the Sylvan Library play. Oko's fine. Make that a 3/3. Okay. Put on top, but I'll pay for the Misty. Just so I can dig next turn a little bit more. Let's go with our own Oko for now. Nice. Put on top, put on top. I guess we'll see what they have first. Interesting. Definitely just going with Batterskull here. Sorry, Mirran Crusader. Force pitch days, that's fine. The Oko at least kind of null and voids the cloths, which is nice. So if I can just hold up 2 mana as I'm playing out Stoneforge and stuff, I should be okay with dealing with the cloths. No land for my opponent. Can we find a Wasteland? I guess it doesn't really matter because of the yeah. Doesn't really matter. I like the knight here a little bit more. Create a food. Attack my opponent for 6. Play Stoneforge. Probably go and get Jitte here. Sort of Finance is interesting, but I kind of want the extra life gain just in case Batterskull doesn't work out. No, it's going to be Sword. It closes the game faster and just draws me cards. I think we have enough outs to life loss here. This puts me to 8. That's fine. Brainstorm's okay. See if they find a fetch land. End step, make the food, gain 3, go to 11. Untap, hold up Batterskull, or play Knight. If I find a land I can play Knight, hold up Batterskull, which is nice. Dreadhold's okay. I'm not going to swords here because if I have a land on top, then I can just hold up swords and then hold up activation and food. So we're in a really good position here. Nice. Oh, Wasteland. Put on top, put on top. Create a food. Fetch. Savannah. Swords this. This plays around Bolt a little bit better, thankfully. Like if I went all in on the sword, they could just have Bolt on the creature that I equip with. So now I get to hold up Stoneforge and food, which is cool. The next turn we attack for 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we actually have Xaxes on the field with Batterskull. Let's see what Ponder does. Ponder is a shuffle. Nice. Yeah, really tough for my opponent. That's a pretty nice win to get over Rug, which can be a pretty difficult matchup as we've seen, so really cool to see. Thanks for watching. I will see you, I guess a little bit about myself. I'm Dukes on Twitch. I stream twice on Twitch, usually playing Maverick, Thursday nights at Australian Eastern Standard Time of 7:30 PM, and usually Sundays around 10:30, 11 Australian Eastern Standard Time. And then this year I thought that I just wanted to make some YouTube content. I do want to get to 1,000 subs, and I'm pretty close, so if you do enjoy this, do consider subscribing, because it means a lot, and getting to that 1K has just been a bit of a goal for a little while, so yeah, hopefully see you in Game 4. Cheers. Hey, welcome back to Dukes on Twitch. Here with a mull. Here with a pretty poor opening, so here for round 4. We'll mulligan this. And sketchy, but we do have the mana, so I'm going to keep this and just go for a basic forest, and hopefully then the nobles can get us there. Not sure what my opponent's on. But this should be okay. Keep and bottom. Probably just one sword. I think that's fine. The one thing I probably don't want to see is like a turn 1 Mother of Runes, because then I have to go for maybe a Savannah. Snow Ponder. Okay. Pond is interesting because it means that my opponent is looking for something that they need, because they don't know what I'm on, so they chose not to shuffle, so they obviously have a hand that just works. Still pretty happy here to go for Forest. Just in case it is a Wasteland deck. I assume it's not now based on the snow-covered forest, but you never know. I think a land next turn is what I really want, so I can 2-spell Thalia and Noble Hierarch. And then just hope not to see Plague Engineer. Dreadhorde. Okay. Pretty good. There's a land. So I can either go Oko or Swords and Thalia. I think Swords and Thalia is fine. Just gotta get rid of it. I have a force. Force, pitch, force. Alright. Well then, let's follow that up with a Thalia. There's some consideration not to Thalia, and actually just go for mana. We could like Trop, play out Noble, and then also Green Suns for Dryad Arbor to make sure that next turn Oko does resolve. Just no Bolt, please. Bolt would still be really annoying. Sprite Dragon. Okay. That's going to be good. See what the Ponder is. Hopefully a shuffle just to take off some of this pressure. Double Swords would have been a nice keep. Chose not to shuffle. Rough. No great blocks. Wasteland's pretty good. Forest. Two cards left for my opponent. Okay. I think just tick up to 6. Currently I don't really have to deal with... I'm going to see what they do before. Let's cast the Thalia first. That might give us more information about their hand. Days. So I'm probably okay with just making the Dreadhorde a 3/3 here, but then we're just like, we're dying in the air. So I think I just have to try to tick this up and hope that the Yoko doesn't die next turn. And then maybe we can start getting some traction with these food tokens becoming 3/3s, because otherwise, you know, relying on the top of the deck for Maverick isn't that great when you're running a bunch of removal. A bunch of, like, cards here that aren't that great. I mean, Collector Ouphe, Qasali Pridemage, Gaddock Teeg. Okay, it's a pretty big win. I'm also going to hold the food for now. Hold the planes. I'm also just going to attack with the Hierarch, because keeping the food back might incentivize my opponent not to attack with the Dreadhorde Arcanist. Knight's pretty nice. So if that resolves, then I think I can just attack with the food here. Yeah. See if we can get some sort of race going. The issue is that the Knight still dies to Bolt because of Dreadhorde. Or a Chain Lightning. But we're currently winning the race, which is pretty funny. Opponent has 3 cards in hand. One's Wasteland, which isn't that great. So this is looking pretty good for us. Noble. Okay. Means we can attack for 6. If my opponent had Bolt, I assume they would have attacked with the Arcanist to kill the Knight. So I don't think they could have a removal spell here. I mean, if they want to block with the Arcanist, be my guest. Then I'll probably just use Knight in my turn on the Volk, and probably get rid of the Trop, because it is currently the only target for the Wasteland. They're going to block. Wow, okay. That's pretty huge. Oh, I could get Canopy. Actually, I'm going to go for Canopy. And see what I draw. Okay. It's a Dryad Arbor, which isn't too bad. Nice. So a pretty aggressive start for my opponent in a pretty good position, but just couldn't get the Dreadhorde online, which is nice for us. This is going to be very close to what we do for Rug. So Cradle, Gaddock Teeg, Qasali Pridemage. We want the parts and the Oblivion Rings. Especially to deal with Sprite Dragon. That card can really get out of hand quickly. It is just going to be the beast. If they're playing Young Pyromancer, then I might think about Beast in Game 3. I don't think Meddling Mage is that great. Could be interesting on something like Bolt or Chain Lightning, but otherwise it's not doing a whole lot. It's not really a card that can lock down a deck like Blue-Red Delver. The extra paths really help, especially against this version that's a little bit more aggressive than Rug Delver. A pretty good budget deck, I think, as well. You can skimp on the Volks a little bit, which obviously are quite expensive now, but otherwise the deck, you know, outside of Force of Wills isn't too bad. The Delvers, the Dreadhordes, and the Sprite Dragons are all relatively cheap, a few dollars each, if that. And then you have Brainstorms, Ponders, Lightning Bolts, Preordains, Chain Lightnings. It's a pretty sweet deck. Might be playing something like Brazen Burrow in the 75. Vapor Snag perhaps is a card to think about. I'll keep this. The double swords is really nice, so just pretty much on that basis I'm going to keep. But I do want to draw another land. I don't really want to go for a Savannah off this Windswept Heath. If I can play this game off basic forest and basic plains, I would be more than happy. And then being able to cast an Oko off maybe a Noble Hierarch is just a luxury that if I can afford it, fine. Windswept's interesting because it gets both basics. So if I draw a Verdant, then I'll use that to get the forest. Interesting. Getting a dual land into Preordain is interesting. If they went like Island Preordain, then I could see that they maybe kept a one lander. One top, one bottom. Okay. Green Suns. Alright. I think there's just a huge incentive here to go for Savannah. I can't really afford to just go for basics here. And then try to get this Green Suns online. There is some thought of playing the Hierarch because it is a second white source, which means that next turn I could double spell. It's going to be Jeskai, which is interesting. Arcanist is fine. This also means that, yeah, this is rough because if they do have a protection spell here, I can't double spell the swords. So actually a pretty big misplay by not playing the Noble Hierarch. And obviously Green Suns only gets better as the game goes on, so I guess we will see what happens here. Okay, well, didn't really mind. Now I don't mind just wastelanding my opponent off red, which is pretty big. Preordain is fine. Preordain puts 2 to the bottom. Oh, they missed a land drop. Huge. Okay. So I think it's definitely going to be Thalia. So I'm going to tap like this because that means I can attack for 2 with the Dryad Arbor. They didn't have a force to keep the Dreadhorde alive, so I didn't think they'd have a force for the Thalia either, which is kind of nice. Delver's fine. Noble. I don't mind just getting down Jitte here, because they can't counter it because of the Thalia. And it means that they have to try to find a land to hold up any sort of removal. But otherwise, Thalia just means that they can't actually bluff anything if they only have the one land. So I do want to see a flip here, because a flip means that the opponent didn't draw a land. Yeah, and Lightning Bolt is pretty bad here, because they can't actually even cast it off the mana they have available, so looking pretty good so far. Another ring. Alright, let's go for Noble first. Yeah, and then we get to attack. Yeah, it's a tough spot for my opponent, so nice to get that one. Cool. I'll see you in match 5. Hey, unfortunately I did not record the last match of the league. We played against Snow. We won game 2, but unfortunately Uro got there in the end in game 3. Just didn't really have much against Snow, unfortunately. But overall the deck seemed pretty solid. The Mirrans were fine, but maybe they are better as something else. Especially against a deck like mid-range or control, I might just want some extra Planeswalkers in the deck. Something like Nissa or Garruk, so we'll see how that goes. But overall, I thought that the deck was pretty nice. Perhaps some more main deck removal in something like Skyclave Apparition could be there, or maybe Skyclave could be there over the Oblivion Rings. Maybe it's overkill to play those just because of Tibalt and some other cards that aren't seeing too much play, like Omniscience, which of course Skyclave doesn't hit, but tonight they're pretty good. They were obviously against Rug, they were really good because they're a removal spell that my opponent can't really deal with once it's on the field, so that was pretty sweet. A huge thank you to everyone who came in and watched. Let me know what you think, what I can do to improve this YouTube content, and yeah, I mean, hit that subscribe button if you like it. I'll be back next week with another deck, so stay tuned, have a nice week, stay safe, and hopefully I'll catch you then. Cheers.